Hello, everybody. This is Trisha Schmalhofer with BAM, Badasses, Alchemists, Mystics. And I am so excited today because in the studio, I have my amazing, fabulous Transcendental Meditation teacher, Gary Barron. Hi, Gary.
Hi. It's a joy to be here with you.
Good. I'm so glad. It took me a little while to get Gary to say yes to this podcast. And he is my Transcendental Meditation teacher. And how I came to find him, I live in Melbourne, Palm Bay, Florida. And one of my nieces, who's a millennial, we were chit-chatting in the kitchen. She's now 33. I think she just turned 33, but this was a few years ago. And we were talking about, art and creativity and ways to get better at that. And she mentioned David Lynch, one of his books. And then I started exploring him, and then TM came up. And that led me to a video that Bobby Roth made about TM, and he was on Ellen DeGeneres. And I saw that clip and I said, I wonder if there's a teacher in my area. Found Gary. He responded right away, and I took an intro class and then decided to learn the technique with him. And then we do check-ins every 3 to 6 months, depending on what's going on in our busy lives. And I just love the technique. It's really easy to do. And so, Gary, welcome.
Welcome. Thank you.
Yes. And what do you want to share about TM as far as the basics? I figure we'll go over the basics of the technique.
Sure.
Right?
Sure.
Like you said, people can go on tm.org.
Right.
Right? And find out a lot of information.
Yeah, the tm.org website and the davidlynchfoundation.org website has all this information and research and different folks that practice TM and the benefits they enjoy. But, it's so much easier to just use the word TM than Transcendental Meditation, because most people can't either pronounce it or spell it. So probably, for the rest of the few minutes, I'll just use the word TM.
TM.
Yeah.
And I even stumbled on it a little bit. It is kind of a tongue twister.
It is.
Transcendental meditation, the word transcendental, I had a client that I was working on in a healing session, and he said the kind of meditation he did was transcendental meditation. And I always pictured it as you're going up, right?
Yeah.
You're going up and out and expanding. But when I learned the technique, it's actually, for me, the opposite.
Yeah.
I actually kind of sink down into it.
Yeah.
Rather than up.
Well, the best analogy of TM is to use the analogy of an ocean, because on the surface of the ocean, it's ever turbulent and ever active waves of the ocean. But as you go down towards the ocean floor, it becomes more settled and silent and calmer. And it's the same analogy or parallel to our mind. And in the practice of TM, we take a specific thought, follow some very simple instructions, and we take a thought from this gross, conscious, active thinking level, and we begin to experience the deeper, quieter, more peaceful, calmer levels of the mind until we transcend or go beyond, because that's what the word transcends means.
I couldn't remember that.
Even the most subtle, quietest level of a thought of our mental activity, and experience that unbounded, perfect silent reservoir where all thoughts originate. And it's an unbounded, infinite reservoir of energy, creativity, happiness, and energy that everyone has. So basically we dive down, we have that experience, and the mind becomes infused with the qualities of that experience, and we bring that out into our activity like a sponge, absorbing moisture. And it's just everyone, regardless of their age, as long as they're 10 years old or older, or there is a technique for children, and regardless of their age or their background, can easily learn in a few minutes the practice of TM.
There's a visual that you brought with you
Oh,
with
yeah.
the bubbles, right? I love this visual, and I couldn't find one online that I could pull off, so I'm going to just show it on Gary's camera. It's like the ocean waves are at the top, and that's conscious thinking. That's
Yes.
kind of churny, wavy, right? And then as you practice TM, you kind of you follow like the bubbles down. That's how I picture it. These are
true.
bubbles
Yeah.
into the source of thought or pure consciousness at the bottom, and that's the transcendental space.
Yeah, because you're actually going beyond this gross, active, conscious thinking level, like the ever constant waves of the ocean, and begin to experience the deeper, quieter, more peaceful levels of the mind until you transcend and experience this field, which many disciplines have given many names over the years.
Yes.
Samadhi, the self, being, pure consciousness, transcendental consciousness. But that's with the goal of, all these writers and poets and meditations or personal development techniques. That's the goal. And with TM, it's effortless, spontaneous, and you have that experience each and every time.
Yes. And you do. I do. It might be sometimes when I practice, I get really deep in there very quickly. And sometimes it might not feel as deep, but something you've taught me is every time you do it, there's benefits. And to not have an intention going in, like I'm going to get down to because that's going totally against the technique.
Yeah.
That just to allow it, and that even if I don't get into that space, that there's still benefit to the brain.
There is, and you bring up a perfect point, and that is every time you sit to meditate and follow the simple instructions, you have that transcending experience. And when you're diving down and you're coming up, but it is effortless, it's natural, it's spontaneous, and it's not a meditation where there's any mind control. There's no stopping of your mental activity or thoughts. That's not natural.
Yeah.
There's no effort, and that's the whole practice of TM. Why it's so it's different from all those other meditations out there.
Yes.
Whether it's mindfulness or concentration meditation or whatever, is you do have maximum benefit and enjoyment every meditation.
Yes, and that was one of the things that really attracted me to TM, to seek you out, was you're not trying to subdue thoughts. Because anytime you mention meditation to people out there in the world, I can't do meditation because my mind's too active. Yeah. That's the number one thing. I can't stop my thoughts. That's not TM, you trying to stop your thoughts.
No.
It's actually quite the opposite. It's allowing them to come in, and we're going to get into the technique a little bit more with the mantra and how that plays into it. But something you said to me once during, and correct me if I got it wrong, but Maharishi Mahesh, who brought TM into the mainstream, who we're going to talk about later, you actually knew him personally, studied with him, worked with him.
Sure.
He said that the transcendental state is actually the natural default setting of your brain. It wants to be there.
Yeah.
So how I've kind of translated that is the more that I do TM regularly, twice a day for 20 minutes.
Sitting comfortably with eyes closed, yes.
Yes, and we'll go into the technique, but that the more that if I do that regularly, it almost reminds my brain that this is where you like it.
Yeah.
My brain doesn't want to be all out there like multitasking and juggling up in the choppy waters of that's where life is. But the more I practice regularly, I'm not up in that choppy area as often.
Well, you bring up a really important point, and that is the nature of life is to seek that which is more charming, brings more happiness, better health, better prosperity, and productivity. And the nature of that field is one of perfect silence, perfect charm. It's a source of happiness that everyone has within them. So the mind is kind of drawn automatically towards that field, like an iron filing is drawn to a magnet. And that's why the practice of TM is so natural. And the mind, if left lively and following some very simple instructions, will be drawn towards that field automatically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You've articulated it well.
Thanks.
I think maybe you should be a TM teacher.
Maybe eventually. I think I've asked you about that, and it's not an easy process to become a teacher.
No, my situation back in the early or mid 70s was, it took about a year, and you were personally certified, and you studied with Maharishi Mahesh Yogi directly. Mm-hmm. Now they kind of encapsulate it a little faster, but it's fun. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and we. I want to get into back in the 70s when Gary actually practiced this and learned this. Things were a little different back then, right?
Oh, yeah.
But so the basic technique, we kind of hit on some points.
Right.
That it's effortless. You're not concentrating on anything. You're not focusing on anything. You don't really have an intention going in. Do you want to just kind of go over the basic?
Sure. The practice of TM is you take a thought on this gross conscious thinking level, and you follow some very simple instructions. You want me to talk about the mantra maybe a little bit?
Sure. Let's bring in the mantra.
So what the practice of TM, the mechanics, is you have a specific sound, and this sound has no meaning, and it's been handed down throughout the generations from these very highly evolved spiritual masters. And a sound is specifically chosen for each individual by their certified teacher, and then how to use that sound or mantra properly. So by that mantra or sound allows the mind to disengage from its outward focus and allows the mind to spontaneously and effortlessly turn inward and be drawn towards the source of thought. So the two things to learn is your specific sound, because you receive a specific sound that's only that's beneficial and allows you to have maximum progress and evolution, growing towards higher states of consciousness or enlightenment, which is simply a permanent state of inner peace and happiness. And then the technique, how to use it properly. Because if the mantra is an analogy of a vehicle, you need to learn how to drive that vehicle safely and effortlessly. To have maximum experience. And that's why you need a teacher, and you can't learn from a book or online.
That's what I was going to ask. Why can't you just pick a word that doesn't have meaning and use that as my own mantra and not even pay a teacher?
Yeah.
You just answered both of those questions. I think more about the actual mantra, because I think I even asked you, Gary, don't you just use the same mantra for everybody and you say it's special? And he goes, no, there's a whole bucket full of mantras. And I'm big on energy and frequency and vibration, and I feel like the mantra that he picked for me really does match me. Like the mantra that I have, which we cannot say what it is. It's very secret. But because it's my personal one. Even if other people in the world have it, I don't care. I feel a connection to the mantra. And when I'm practicing TM, it's like the mantra and my thoughts kind of dance together.
Sure.
Sometimes the mantra brings the thoughts down into that pure consciousness or transcendental space. Sometimes the thoughts disappear. Sometimes the mantra disappears. Sometimes they're both going on at the same time, kind of battling each other. I sometimes just like to observe in that space of just allowing them to do that as I kind of come up, go down. Sometimes I stay down there. I think it's beautiful.
It's an effortless, enjoyable experience. It's easy to learn. And the nice thing about TM is it's not a beginning and an intermediate and advanced type of program. From the very first day, in a few minutes, you begin to have that transcending experience effortlessly, and the benefits begin to grow and blossom just from that regular practice. And it's kind of like, over time, just closing your eyes. In those first few seconds with your eyes closed, the mind is kind of drawn automatically to those deeper levels, just because the mind has become acclimated to that experience. So, I encourage everybody to give it a try.
Yes. So, did you ever have someone, though, when they're first learning it, that have trouble? Like they just, I would think it's so simple that it's almost hard for some people?
That's a really great question. So I've taught so many people, hundreds and hundreds of people over the 45 years. And whether it was a child 10 years old or a senior citizen 70, 80 plus years old, regardless of their religion or philosophy or background or education, everyone was able to very effortlessly and easily learn TM because it is so simple. It just utilizes the very natural nature of the mind, following those simple instructions. So it's not concentration. It's, there's no effort and there's no mind control, as we mentioned.
Yes.
And, whether it's veterans with PTSD that have learned, or children with ADHD and attention deficit disorder, or people, that had terminal illnesses, all these folks that I've taught, they effortlessly and immediately had that transcending experience and enjoyed the benefits.
Yes. So we're going to go to our first break, and we're going to get into some of the research that's being done with those specific issues that people are having. And we're going to continue to talk about the technique a little bit more.
Sure.
So we will be right back in just a minute or two.
You're listening to Space Coast Podcast, home of the greatest podcasts on the Space Coast. If you're interested in becoming a sponsor or having your own show, email us at spacecoastpodcast@hotmail.com. Space Coast Podcast. Talk hard!
Join us for the fresh, new For Your Best Self podcast with Drs. Anita Saluja and Rebecca Novo of Dermatology plus Plastic Surgery. We will reveal the facts about techniques, trends, products, and procedures to be your best self. The first and only podcast combining the synergy of aesthetic dermatology plus plastic surgery. Search For Your Best Self on Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and Spotify.
Have you or anyone at your place of work or business tested positive for COVID-19 or COVID-19 antibodies? If so, call PT Group to come out and test microbial activity within your facility. Within minutes, our service kills COVID-19 and other viruses and bacteria and keeps the surfaces in your home, facility, and business protected up to 90 days from further antimicrobial attacks. More and more businesses and homes are trusting PT Group to keep their living and workspaces safe. Call or text for more information. 888-672-7724. That's 888-672-7724.
We are back. This is Trisha Schmalhofer with Gary Barron. Is it Barron? Baron?
Either way is fine.
What do you prefer?
If I'm in Europe, I'd say Baron, but if I'm in the States, I'd say Baron.
Okay. Ooh, Baron. That sounds kind of fancy.
It's pretty sexy in Europe.
Baron. So, Gary Baron is here with me, and he is my Transcendental Meditation teacher. I appreciate him so much. And we do have a comment from Angie Ponder Reed on Facebook, and she's saying, "Oh, I want my own mantra." So, now I know Angie's in Georgia. So if Angie would want to find a TM teacher, how would she go about doing that?
Just easily go to the tm.org website and put I think it'll ask a link with your name and your zip code, and it'll automatically give you the name of the TM center or person and telephone number for her.
Okay. And one thing I liked about I learned TM, that you can do check-ins. You become kind of like a lifetime member, right?
True.
And you can do check-ins with TM teachers anywhere in the world.
It's true. Once you learn TM, the actual course is taught over 4 consecutive days.
Okay.
It takes about an hour and a half, 2 hours a day. But after that, regardless of where you are in the world, you can always go and sit with a TM teacher and meditate together just to have questions answered and ensure everything is going smoothly and no efforts creeping into the process. And there's never a charge. It's a lifetime of free follow-up.
Isn't that wonderful? A free lifetime follow-up. So I just love that. And then I get emails about different TM retreats and things like that that are held in this area. So I haven't been to one yet, but I've been kind of eyeballing them for a while. Thanks, Angie, for putting the tm.org link up there. That's fabulous. So it's learning the technique, but I feel like I have support whenever I need it to continue, because sometimes I practice other kinds of things, and sometimes I need to call Gary and check in and be like, hey, can we just do the technique together and just remind me it's a lot simpler than what I'm thinking it is. So I'm really grateful for that. So why don't we dip into the research a little bit. I have a little pamphlet that I think I got from you, actually.
Sure. Well, it's interesting. Don't mean to interrupt.
Oh, no, please do.
But so we were touching on, Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, when, we'll talk about maybe a little later about how this whole thing came to the world. But he was studying at the university in India, the Allahabad University, to study in physics. So he knew all about research and measurement and whatever. And then when he was persuaded to provide this very sacred technique that was never available to the public, and started in India and Asia and then traveled around the world, he realized in the West, it's such an intangible technique. We didn't quite understand the whole thing about meditation. In fact, he called it deep meditation rather than transcendental meditation initially. And he realized very quickly that that we in the West need measurable, tangible benefits.
Yes.
If we're going to learn this strange practice of meditation, which wasn't so common in the 50s and 60s.
Yes.
So some of the research they started with and has been continuing over the 50 plus years has been on how it affects the mind and our brainwave activity, how the benefits that we enjoy there, how it affects our health and our physiological, biochemistry and different aspects of the neurophysiology, and how it affects our emotions. So, very briefly, as far as the mind, when you have that transcending experience, then there's a unique process that happens in the brain. And normally the brain, all these different regions of the brain, the left and right hemisphere, the frontal region, the prefrontal cortex, which is like the CEO of the brain, it's responsible for our focus, our organizing, our moral reasoning, our emotional control, our planning, and then the rear area of the brain. All these different regions of the brain normally function completely randomly and independently of each other. And in the practice of TM, with that transcending experience, everyone enjoys this enlivenment and integration and synchrony of these different regions of the brain functioning as one total, optimized, synchronized, unified functioning. And that is one of the reasons why scientists think that it's able to learn things quicker, that our IQ actually increases with the practice of TM regardless of our age, that our short and long-term memory improves, we're more resourceful and creative, our attention, our span is improved, because that was certainly one of the reasons that I learned TM and had some, I was a space cadet in school. So that's the mind. And, as we have that transcending experience, as the mind settles down, the body settles down like two sides of one coin, because one always affects the other.
Yes, they do.
And so you get this unique level of rest, dissolve deep-rooted stress, and all those psychosomatic or stress-related illnesses start to improve and dissipate, whether it's lower blood pressure, improved heart functioning, improved digestive system, reduced anxiety, better sleep, reduced insomnia, all those things that you can read about online. And then the last thing is how we feel inside dictates how we interact with others.
Yes.
How productive we are, how much we appreciate our friends and family. So naturally, as we're having that transcending experience, mind settles down, body settles down, we dissolve deep-rooted stresses, we're more energetic, we're more positive, we're more compassionate, empathetic, productive, and happier. And it's just a spontaneous experience. And the best analogy that I like to use, and that Maharishi used to use, is if you had a plant, how you would strengthen and enhance the plant's growth or deal with any issues is through the root. You'd water and fertilize the root. And then all aspects of the plant are enhanced. And it's the same thing. Transcending allows all aspects of our life to be touched and improved. And it happens spontaneously just from the regular practice twice a day.
Lovely.
I was long-winded, I know.
No, but and how many years have you been practicing TM?
I've been doing since the around 73.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And how long have you been teaching?
Since 70. I started the TM certification process in 74 and been teaching since 75.
Oh, so you knew you wanted to be a teacher after a year.
Well, I found that the benefits were so impactful and amazing in my personal experience. I thought, well, why don't I put off college for a little while and see what it's like to actually provide this knowledge to others. And certainly giving back has been the most fulfilling experience of my life, for sure.
Yes, and you learned to be a teacher with Maharishi Mahesh personally.
Yeah, it was.
What an experience.
Yeah, it was fun back in those days.
Yeah.
But I'll share a little sidebar.
Go ahead. We can go into him and the stories.
So, in the 60s, Donovan and Mike Love of the Beach Boys and the Beatles and Mia Farrow, or was her sister, Prudence. You had all these folks, that's studying with Maharishi. But when you look at the earlier tapes, videotapes from 69, 70 or whatever, it's just a bunch of stoners or hippies.
That's what I would think back then.
And so, we were all, running.
Enlightenment.
We were looking for enlightenment. And so, we kind of got off track with using chemicals. But, I would say many TM teachers back in those days, had that experience prior to learning TM.
Yeah. Well, and we were chatting a little bit before about the different generations and age groups learning TM now. And, we do know all the health benefits now. PTSD is another one that's being researched that TM's really helping with. ADHD, I think we talked about, with children, because it is so easy to learn. But it seems like the older generations are picking up TM for the health benefits, for the also with neuroplasticity. There's a lot of research, and they're finding that the brain, even in the older ages, can change and learn and grow more neurons, and that this technique actually can be carried over into life. It can be carried over when we're in our waking state. Yeah,
it's interesting how everyone comes to an introductory presentation, regardless of their age or their background, for some specific reasons.
Yes.
And, some are really seeking enlightenment and inner peace and reduced anxiety and better sleep. Others, for specific health reasons. Others for the, improved mental processes.
Yes.
The studies, the long-term clinical trials, finding that your brain actually functions more efficiently and it's easier to learn and better memory for individuals regardless of their age, because it used to be thought that at a certain age you kind of start to degrade in those areas, and that's not the case for people practicing TM.
Yeah. Well, and I think the younger generations, like with my niece, it was about creativity and enlightenment, spiritual development. And I think me being a Gen Xer somewhere in between, it was more like I wanted my brain to be healthy, and my mental is so active that I'm like, I need to find a technique that helps align that and calm it down. So I can have some more spiritual development and be healthy. I'm kind of in the middle. I want the health benefits and the enlightenment benefits.
Yeah, the cliche we used to use is, being centered, because many of us practice, whether it's your TM teacher or others, prior to TM, we tried all these different techniques, and it was kind of hit or miss. With TM, it's just, that was one of the things my TM teacher said. I said, well, why should I learn TM? And then he said, well, what are you doing now? And I said, well, practicing these techniques, it's kind of hit or miss whether I'm enjoying benefits. And he said, with TM, you'll get maximum benefits every time you sit to meditate, regardless of where you are, regardless of what you're feeling. And it's just, so following that advice was a blessing.
Good. Marjorie, I'm seeing, asked a question, which we kind of touched on already, Marjorie, but I'll just do a brief recap. Is there a difference between just meditation and transcendental meditation? And as we talked a little bit about that TM is effortless. You let the thoughts just happen. You don't have a lot of focus, where some other types of meditation, there's definitely like a purpose and a focus. Do you want to add to that?
Because, usually meditation can kind of be classified in a couple ways. Concentration meditation, which is the first meditation I practiced, following my breathing and, focusing on that. And, some people are focusing on whether it's a part of physiology or an external object. And that effort, that concentration, just keeps the mind on this gross conscious thinking level.
It does.
And, visualization or, thinking of something you did, whether it's a walk in a forest or whether, the technique of mindfulness.
Mindfulness is a big thing right now.
Or whatever. You're involved kind of in the brain or the thoughts is more thinking on the surface level. And, research has just shown that TM has been extremely valuable and much more impactful as far as the benefits than these other meditations. And I don't want to get too long-winded, but the AMA and all these different organizations have endorsed TM not only to reduce blood pressure, but one of the stats that is most profound was a 48% reduction in stroke, heart attack, and death among individuals practicing TM of a certain age group.
What percentage?
It was
reduction?
48%.
That is very significant.
It's
almost half.
It is, and that's compared to the average industry, health insurance industry statistics. So, there's all this research out there, and the more research you do, the more comfortable you'll be.
Right. And those of you that are really sciencey, and then we're going to go to break in a minute. You talked about the focus concentration that keeps you in the beta brain waves, which is your everyday thinking, logical. Mindfulness, which is really kind of a buzzword right now. The Mayo Clinic said is more of like a dream-like, and that's the theta brain wave. That takes medium effort. And then TM takes you into the alpha brain wave, which I always understood was the true meditative brain wave. And that's relaxed, happy, and focused, and there's no effort in that one.
It's very true. And the last thing is that if you study the brainwave activity and these other techniques, it's just localized, whereas TM has these different regions of the brain that are synchronized and integrated. And that's why, just from measuring the electrical activity of the brain, it's so profound of people when they close their eyes and they follow the simple instructions as opposed to other techniques.
That's very interesting about the synchronicity rather than just the isolated areas. I love that. Okay, so we're going to go to break, and we'll be back in just a minute or two.
Hey there, this is Jesse Hull. And I want to remind you to tune into Business Elite Brevard Edition. And what we do on Business Elite Brevard Edition is bring to you some of the biggest movers and shakers on the Space Coast. These could be industry leaders, tech innovators, and social influencers. And what we do is kind of bring them on, ask them some of the most relevant questions that you may not know about. And these are people who may not be in the news, but they are making moves behind the scenes. Again, tune in. Business Elite Brevard Edition.
Hey, make sure you check out Space Cowboy Justice with your hosts, Blake Stewart and Paul Daly. We're going to be talking about interesting legal issues in the entertainment industry and everything geek. If you're into Star Wars, Star Trek, Lord of the Rings, comic books, we're talking about it. Coming at you from the Space Coast Podcast Studios.
All right, we're back. This is Trisha Schmalhofer with BAM, Badasses, Alchemists, Mystics, and I'm here today with Gary Barron. And so Gary, one thing when I learned about Maharishi Mahesh, let's hold up his picture. I just love him. I have pictures of him Gary gave me all throughout. I have a couple throughout my house, but this is him probably a little bit older because his beard's gray in this picture. And in those of you watching on YouTube on the break, yeah, it's being shown now. That's a similar picture. He just has such a kindness. His aura is just so calming. You have a very calming aura too, and I'm going to assume that TM, if it's going to take you down into that space and you're carrying that over into your everyday life, and that's going to expand out into the world, because I'm a big proponent of we're all connected on this interconnected web, and if I'm doing my part, it's going to affect the whole. So, wait a minute. Leah Williamson has a comment. Thanks for educating those of us who don't know TM. I like easy and relaxed brain work. Well, then you would love TM, Leah. So doing our own personal practice affects the whole. And what I loved about Maharishi's story is that he was a physicist as well as a yogi. And I love science. I love spiritual development. So that really just made me love the technique even more, because he understood the quantum physics of things. And thank you for sharing. I think you're the one who told me that, actually.
Well, how this whole TM organization and practice came to be is a great story that if we have the time,
please,
I'd love to
we
share.
Have plenty of time. I want to get into this.
So the practice of TM, or Transcendental Meditation, this effortless meditation with these specific secret mantras and how to utilize them effortlessly, was something never available to the masses. It was only available to these reclusive individuals that lived those type of lifestyle deep in the forest or caves of India and the foothills of the Himalayas. So there was an individual that turned out to be Maharishi's teacher or master, and that is his picture right there, Gurudev, and he lived like 70 years by himself in a reclusive lifestyle until he was persuaded to come out and assume a position of the Shankaracharya, which is like the spiritual figurehead for all of India.
Oh, wow.
And so because he came out from that reclusive lifestyle, he learned the practice of TM from his teacher or master. And Maharishi, after he met Gurudev, and Maharishi was told, finish your studies, because Gurudev knew intuitively that was going to be valuable. He knew a lot, which Maharishi didn't at the time. And then Maharishi finished his studies, and he went to be with Gurudev and became his favorite student. And before Gurudev passed, he shared the secret knowledge of Transcendental Meditation with Maharishi. And then Maharishi went, when Gurudev passed, left and resumed that kind of reclusive lifestyle and lived in the Valley of the Saints, or Uttarkashi was the name of the area. And, he'd just kind of hang out, the enlightened individual and spiritual masters that kind of resided. And so that was his life. And he never had a desire to, teach or, start a TM organization. Long story short, he kept having this thought to travel to through India to the South India and just have a pilgrimage and, visit the different temples throughout India and then come back. Mm-hmm. Well, when he was finishing his travels in the south of India, individuals from that area were revered and always taken care of. So he was given lodging and taken care of. And before he returned back on his travels, there was a knock on his door where he was staying, in the house he was staying. And he answered the door, and the person says, "Are you so-and-so from so-and-so?" And he says, "Yes." And he said, "Wonderful. We've set up a series of public lectures for you to talk about the special meditation technique that you practice." And Maharishi says, "No, I don't speak. I don't publicly do that." And he goes, "Well, we've already set it up.
I know.
So what are your topics?" So Maharishi rattles 7 topics off. And so, long story short again, people were so enamored and wanted to learn the secret meditation, which were called deep meditation rather than transcendental meditation at the time, that he stayed and taught it to the people locally. And then it just ballooned and blossomed and taught more people. And then he was persuaded to get on a plane and travel. First place, I think, was Burma. And he was met by one person at the airport. And then he was just persuaded to continue to travel and finally go to the West and the United States, and the rest is history.
Yes. And once it gets to the West, it's like wildfire, right? Did he get any backlash from the community for teaching it out of that secluded
Well, it's interesting.
space?
That's a great question. Yes, some people thought, well, this is wonderful that you're teaching it to the masses.
Yes.
But then other yogis or individuals said, this is very precious. This is only for select group that have that reclusive, monkish type of lifestyle.
Right.
So there was kind of both sides. But over time, because I went to a 4 or 6 month course in India where he gathered people from all around the world, and Maharishi had on stage all these yogis and spiritual teachers, and they all endorsed him, and that was in 1980 and 81. So it kind of went full circle. But yeah, there were some initially that thought, this is sacred, we don't want to just give it to anyone.
Right. Thank goodness, he almost couldn't say no. The person's like, no, we already set it up. Like, you're not saying no, because I'm so glad that it did reach the West, because this is what I think our brains need.
And one last thing is, when he was teaching in the 60s, he was basically ready to go back and resume that lifestyle because he had taught and certified TM teachers to keep the practice. But something happened and he never was able to make it back to that reclusive lifestyle. He was persuaded by the TM teachers, continued to share this knowledge with the world.
A similar happened with Reiki, which is a Japanese healing method that I teach. Same kind of thing. It was just in Japan. It was isolated there, and someone got taught that lived outside of Japan, and there was the same kind of thing. We want to keep this sacred, keep this here. It did get sent out, and then it kind of spread. Yeah. And some people will say, oh yeah, Reiki's like watered down now. America does that to techniques, So, but you know what? I feel like there's a divine intelligence at work here, and things just kind of flow as they
Nature provides what we need at the time.
Nature does provide. Sometimes we just have to let that go. Yeah. I think... So Jesse just passed me a note that I know, right, Jesse? You're like, I tried to do that in secret. All right, we'll just keep going, because we don't have to go to another break, so we can keep going with stories. Sorry, Jesse. I'm a transparent person. Plus, sometimes people want to know what the behind the scenes stuff is. You know what I'm saying? And we do have a fabulous producer, Jesse Hall, that's behind the scenes and makes this show work very well. So thanks, Jess. Do you want to continue with some stories about... well, okay, we did talk about something about going to... So there are retreats. Can we just talk about the difference in general? I've never meditated with anyone else other than you,
Sure.
with TM, or when I learned it, I had another student there with me. And I always tell you this, I think, that when I come to your space and we do it together, I tend to go deeper a lot quicker.
Sure.
Is it more impactful doing it in a group?
It is. And, you touched upon a couple of things. First off, how we feel inside is radiated out into the environment.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're meditating and you have that positive, life-supporting, harmonious influence, it does radiate out into the environment. It's kind of like you're doing your bit for world peace.
Mm-hmm.
And the more people that obviously are radiating that, the more powerful coherence in the environment. But meditating together as a group is more powerful. The transcending experience is more powerful. And they've done a lot of studies as far as measuring brainwave coherence, and the power of people meditating as a group is definitely encouraged. It kind of has a more powerful, deeper transcending and by meditating as a group. And that kind of leads me to, my first experience. When I learned TM, I learned for a lot of reasons, as many people do, improve with their studies and, be more patient, more inner peace, more energy and all those things. But when I went to a weekend retreat, basically they're designed so you can actually do a little more extra meditation with other people there. And that power of the group, it's so profound that any chance you get, if there is an opportunity to meditate with others, whether people in your household or meditate with your TM teacher or TM centers around the country, they have group meditation on a regular basis.
Mm-hmm.
It takes on a whole new level of experience.
TM centers, we didn't mention that, so that's something to maybe tell people that that's a way they can connect. I think I lost it. Yeah, so let's talk about TM centers, because I know like here in Brevard County, like the county down, there's one, right? In Indian River County?
Yes, so
so
you have part-time TM teachers that teach out of their home, which is myself. I'm in Brevard County. I'm kind of the token certified TM teacher, and I teach in the Suntree Vieira area. And then you have full-time TM teachers with a group of certified TM teachers, and the closest one is in Vero Beach, run by a delightful young lady, Jane Bailaski. And then you have full-time centers in Orlando. I'm talking about just Florida.
This is Florida.
Orlando, Florida, Tampa, South Florida has quite a few full-time TM centers. Jacksonville, Florida. And then virtually, like Atlanta or, all these different regions of the country, you just go online and you put in your information and your zip code, and it'll pull up what TM teachers or full-time centers are available.
And so they could go to tm.org and look for centers. So is it an international? Does it go internationally too, not just in America?
Yeah, virtually almost every country in the world. I don't think it's in North Korea. But, I know people have learned TM and have that are from North Korea. But Russia, many people learned TM back in the 70s or 80s. So quite a few countries, there's very few countries in the world that you could not find a certified TM teacher to learn. And the other website that I always encourage people to go to that has these beautiful testimonials is the davidlynchfoundation.org. And he's one of those directors from Hollywood. He directed Twin Peaks and a lot of different
little out there.
Yeah, he's
I like his stuff.
he's an
Blue
interesting
Velvet
guy.
was one of him. Yeah, he has some very kind of like out there things.
Dune, the movie Dune.
That was him?
Yeah, I don't think he takes credit for that or wants to take credit.
He should.
But he learned TM, and he was so enamored with the benefits. He started a foundation, and he's done all these fundraisers where the remaining Beatles, Paul and Ringo, have raised money for inner city school children to learn TM, veterans with PTSD, domestic abused individuals to learn TM.
Yes.
Prison projects. So he's done quite a bit of bringing the awareness and the practice of TM to those that are less fortunate segments of society.
Yeah, because I like that they do that, because not everyone can afford to pay for the class.
Sure.
And I do like that things can be broken down into payments. I think they're doing sliding scale stuff now.
Yeah, they've changed the whole structure so that everybody can now afford regardless of their income level. And it's all in the honor system.
That's lovely.
And the TM.org website kind of touches on that. And then if you have questions, definitely contact your local TM teacher.
Yeah. I know like my niece was looking to learn it in LA, and some of the prices out there were like very outrageous. So I love that it has this philanthropic air to it, that hey, like people that really need it, that are suffering, this is a technique that's easy, it's effective, anyone can do it at any age, and it's now been clinically proven to help. So some of the things on your pamphlet just about benefits, we talked about some specific ones, but in general, stress reduction, improved mental health, normalized blood pressure, lower health care costs. I mean, who doesn't want those 4 things?
Well, two of the things I don't like to throw out stats, but the long-term clinical trials, we talked about the 48% reduction of stroke, heart attack, and death.
Yeah.
But, when they compare a couple other studies to the national health insurance industry statistics, 14% reduction in doctor visits cost, and 74% reduction in inpatient and outpatient hospitalization. So, the time you spent, you're devoting, twice a day, 20 minutes twice a day, practicing TM, and you're investing in that time, and the rewards that you reap are multifold because the benefits continue to grow across the spectrum. So it's definitely time well spent.
So 20 minutes twice a day, and I know it's morning and then early evening, not so much before bed unless, but it's pretty much there has to be a little space in between.
Oh, yeah. So a couple things. One is, if a child of 10 years old was to learn, they would be given a lesser time. They would be meditating for their age of 10 years old. Adults generally do it twice a day for 20 minutes. It's ideal to meditate in the morning for your day's activity,
Yes.
and then again in the late afternoon or early evening to dissolve any stress or impressions that have been incurred that day. And if you can't get it done, then do it closer to bedtime. It's not as ideal,
right?
But it's definitely always ideal to do it twice a day.
Yes.
And so you just want to be
Twice
flexible.
a day, 20 minutes. Yeah. Again, no stress. It's easy. It's relaxed.
Yeah.
Right? It's not like, oh my gosh, I got to get it in. And there's been times, if that second time a day, it's like, oh, I missed that late afternoon one. I'm going to just do it right before bed. Tomorrow I'll, just flow with it.
The last thing you want in life is to stress over your
meditation.
TM.
I know.
There's enough to stress about in life today.
And people do. Whenever you mention meditation to some people, they get stressed because they already have it in their head they can't do it.
The misconceptions, absolutely.
Yes, and this technique is not like that. It's not. So we have like about 6 minutes left. So you've studied with Maharishi Mahesh. Not a lot of people can give like insider. Oh, wait, before we go, that Leah Williamson's asking, why not right before bed?
Well,
why is that not good?
That's a great question. So the ideal is to do it before your large meals, like morning or evening meals, because all that energy is used to digest the food, or you can eat something light, of course, and practice TM. The reason it's not as ideal to do it before TM or before bed is some people may find they get energized whereas others find they get very relaxed and it's easy to fall asleep. So, I tell people just experiment. People have families and jobs and other responsibilities. If you need to do it before bed, do it before bed and see, because different people have different results. We've all done it closer to bedtime. And, unless you get real energized and, you have trouble falling asleep, definitely go for it.
Yes. Yeah. I find, a lot of times when I do come out of it in the morning, and it's recommended to do it before you look at electronics, before you start getting those beta brain waves really active
And
to go
into the whole,
right, because that can happen. It's like, and if you have children or if you have pets, it's like, and don't do it around pets. It's recommended not to do it around pets, which my cat always finds me.
Because they're attracted to the ambience that you radiate out into the environment.
Yes.
Not to get too metaphysical, but
why not? This is Badass as Alchemist Mystics. We get metaphysical all the time on here.
I don't think my wife would call me a badass anymore, but I really like the title, though, that you have. You
are a badass, because our definition on this show is you inspire respect and awe with just being your authentic self.
Oh, that's beautiful.
You to me are a badass. So
do you want me to share some experiences I had with Maharishi?
I do.
So I was very fortunate that Maharishi was touring the U.S. and was it 74, 75, and 76. And in 74, I was in a large auditorium up in, I think, Chicago. So I didn't get much impersonal, up close personal. But in 75, when I was doing my certification and learning TM, he came up to New York. And the TM, there was a facility in South Fallsburg. And he was staying there on site for, I guess, a week. And I was there for several months with TM certification. And so he was touring one of the buildings, and I hadn't been up close and personal. So he's walking inside to a building, and I'm standing outside. And he comes back. And it's traditional to give a spiritual master or your spiritual teacher a flower. Mm-hmm. So I'm standing there with a flower, and Maharishi was only 5 foot tall. So his stature, he wasn't a large man. His laugh would fill an auditorium. But so he comes out, and I'm the first person that he sees, and he walks up to me, and I hand him a flower. And it was traditional to say the words Jai Gurudev, which just means salutations and appreciation to the spiritual teacher. Okay? So I give him the flower, and he smiles at me. And the next thing that I remember is like 3, 4, 5 minutes have gone by, because his cocoon of bliss and silence is so enveloping that I didn't remember talking, thinking, or moving for 3, 4, 5 minutes. And then all of a sudden, I just thought, oh, what was that? And it's just like his presence is so powerful that being in that cocoon of bliss and silence, and having that experience many times with him over the years. It was a beautiful private experience, and I appreciate you letting me share that.
Yeah. There's a few people say that about like the Dalai Lama or even the Pope, spiritual figures that just being in their presence, it's like you feel like you're being hugged by this warmth and peace. I've had a couple spiritual leaders more locally that I'm like, oh wow, that's that same energy.
Yeah, when you're in his presence, all whatever negative thoughts, or if you're tired or whatever negative energy, it just kind of dissipates, and the only thing, you just have this lively, energetic, positive bliss. And, those enlightened masters, they just radiate that, and it envelops. And it's going back to what we were saying, is what you feel inside is reflected and radiated out in the environment.
It is. And there's some science behind that, with like cells in the body will mirror each other. And it's like you start to exude that just being around them, And when you talk about that story, your eyes are getting a little misty, because it's almost like you're back there and you're feeling it.
Yeah.
And even in his photos, I can feel that. it translates into photography. I can feel that energy around him.
Yeah, one of the interviews with David Lynch with Paul McCartney, and asking Paul McCartney when he met Maharishi, and he, basically he's talking about his infectious laugh.
Yeah.
And it just is so powerful, and like you're talking about, these spiritual masters or individuals that you've met throughout your life, that when you're in their presence, it just automatically envelops you with more positivity or silence or calmness or so it's a cool thing.
And you don't have to be a spiritual leader or a yogi or a master to actually exude that yourself. It could simply just being your own self-care practice of TM twice a day for 20 minutes, and then looking at other self-care practices to keep yourself in balance, that if we would all simply do our own stuff, right, it will change the whole.
Well, it's true. Will. And one thing, we talked about, TM's not a religion or philosophy, but it's not a lifestyle. So whatever it is that you're comfortable doing, whether your exercise routine or other personal development techniques, you continue to, you're just adding TM twice a day.
Yes.
And last thing, if we have a minute,
we do.
There's kind of a center, although, with the whole virus, COVID-19, it's a little different, but there's kind of a hub of TMers that practice TM in Fairfield, Iowa. And if you ever get a chance to go visit there or meditate with, it used to be the group always got together twice a day, that just being in that atmosphere, because there's so many people practicing TM, is you're pulling up to that township because it's only like 10,000 people. You kind of feel your stress level or any fatigue kind of dissipate, and the whole time you're there, you just feel very lively and happy. It's a very unique experience.
The whole area, physical area. Are there any virtual things going on with TM? Is there virtual stuff like Zoom stuff?
There is. In fact, I get emails several times a week of all these individuals, whether they're people in different professions or backgrounds, that they're talking about TM and how it profoundly affected their life, whether they're physicists or physicians. So I get those emails all the time, and I'm not sure if people that practice TM or people that don't practice TM, or how many people are getting it, but it's sent out regularly.
Okay. We have to end.
Okay.
If anyone's in Brevard County, how can they get in touch with you? Do you have an email that you could give out?
Sure.
Or that you want to? You don't have to.
No, you go to the tm.org website and put in your zip code, and it'll pull me up, and that's the easiest way. My name is G. Barron. At tm.org for email.
There's also an 800 number, 888-LEARN-TM, if you want to call that and get some more information. There's also www.doctorsontm.org if you want to look at more of the research about TM. So thank you, Gary, for being here, and we'll see you next time on BAM, Badasses, Alchemists, and Mystics.
It's been a pleasure.